Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Apptrepreneur Show, the kind of new and improved Apptrepreneur Show, although all the changes that we will be, putting into the show might not be so obvious right from the get-go, but we are going to take a moment to explain the Apptrepreneur Show going forward, and then we'll get on to the main topics. By the way, I'm your host, Kevin, the Apptrepreneur. Now then, I have decided to relaunch the Apptrepreneur Show as a weekly podcast. It's still going to be in video format. It's still going to be the live stream. However, from this point forward, the Apptrepreneur Show will be made with audio in mind. Like I said, we're still going to do it visually. We're still going to have the Q&As. I see Mark and Mohammed are here. Thank you guys for joining us. And we've got a new slogan. Our slogan is going to be, "This is your place for tech, pop culture, and life in between." Because we are going to be talking about tech, we are going to be talking pop culture, and we will be talking about life in between, which includes a little bit of politics involved. Now, at the beginning of the show, we are going to start describing, give you a little taste of what some of our topics are. And hey, Ryan, how are you doing? We will be talking today about Parler. That will be the main topic, and that will be exclusive to this live stream. We will also be talking about how CNN wants to shut down Newscom and OAN, whatever that thing is called. We will also talk about Prop 22 and the latest legal fight to overturn that. We will talk about Disneyland ending their annual pass program. We will be talking about how eBay is no longer going to let you buy PS5 boxes on eBay. Empty PS5 boxes, I should say. And the fact that HBO Max is extending their discount. What is it? And how long does it last? And how do you get it? These are all topics we are going to be talking about on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Hopefully all of you are having a wonderful Martin Luther King Day Jr. Now, the interesting thing about discussing Parler on Martin Luther King Jr. Day is that you would... obviously, that's going to get me a lot of flack from, a bunch of stray observers, people who think that, on the day where we celebrate Dr. King's legacy, maybe we should not be discussing Parler, because Parler has been a home for extremists and people who actually do not stand for the values that Dr. King himself stood for. And, normally I would say I agree, except here's the thing. People on Twitter and Facebook also don't stand for the things that Dr. King stood for. And even though they do it in his name, I think Dr. King would have some very strong words against censorship and violence against people because you feel you are being mistreated. And this goes either way. I think this can apply to Kwan supporters. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the QA ORN, whatever the heck it is, and Black Lives Matter. Oh, well, maybe not Black Lives Matter, but, Antifa. So I think in the spirit of Dr. King and the freedom that he, wanted, he wanted everyone to be equal and unified and to be able to talk about our differences. So, I feel, maybe on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, these are proper topics to talk about. Hence why I am, starting with those topics and not the much safer, click-friendly Prop 22 topic that I'm sure many people who subscribe to my channel want me to discuss. And of course, for those of you who are not aware, even though we will be doing this podcast, and this will be available on iTunes and Spotify and all those platforms, we are still going to be cutting up the topics later on and spreading them throughout the week so that those of you who do not want to watch or listen to a 2-hour-long podcast, well, really, it's probably going to be like an hour long, you can do this. So anyway, without further ado, let us discuss the first topic, which is obviously Parler. Now, Parler was in many real ways deplatformed fairly recently by the big tech, and I do think it was a coordinated effort. Now, here's the thing. I don't think, Apple and Google were necessarily wrong to ask Parler about hate speech content on their platform. There clearly is a lot of it, and it's clearly not moderated as well as it should be. Where I think they were wrong was to deplatformed the service when Twitter and Facebook also has hate speech on it. And that can come from either direction, not just the left, not just the right. I believe people just use social media for hate speech, and they use it to do things that people should not be using it for. And if Parler was going to be grilled and deplatformed for not cleaning up their act, then so too should Twitter and Facebook. But Parler's biggest blow came when Amazon decided they did not want to host them anymore. And my opinion of that was fairly mixed. I think Amazon was clearly trying to silence them, but I wasn't sure if Amazon was technically doing anything wrong. Amazon was hosting Parler. They technically have the right not to host whoever they want, hence why you want to be careful who you give your power to. And, well, here's the other thing about Amazon. They didn't silence them or censor them so much because they did keep all of their data. They did keep the information so that when Parler found a new home, that data would be transferred and basically nothing would be lost. Well, Parler is back on the internet. However, there are a few catches. This is from ARS Technica. It says, right-wing social media platform Parler, which has been offline since Amazon Web Services dropped it like a hot potato last week, has reappeared on the web with a promise to return as a fully functional service soon. Quotations on the soon. Although the platform's Android and iOS apps are still defunct, this weekend its URL once again began to resolve to an actual website instead of an error notice. The site at the moment consists solely of the homepage, which has a message from company CEO John Metz. Forgive me. And he writes, well, actually, let's not even look at it from this article. Let's go to Parler.com. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, here's Parler. You see, it's back. And this is cute. Hello, world. Is this thing on? And he writes, technical difficulties. Now it seems like the right time to remind you all, both lovers and haters, why we started this platform. We believe privacy is paramount and free speech essential, especially on social media. Our aim has always been to provide a nonpartisan public square where individuals can enjoy and exercise their rights to both. I don't think that's entirely true. As I've mentioned before, they have been caught removing posts from liberal posters, but, I guess freedom of speech is in the eye of the beholder, right? We will resolve any challenge before us and plan to welcome all of you back soon. We will not let civil discourse perish. So that was the message. Now, continuing this article, Parler, however, was deplatformed in the first place explicitly because the content it allowed to flourish was anything but civil, and as multiple reports have made clear, the service backend was designed with basically no thought given to privacy. This is true. Hacking Parler is actually ridiculously easy. Meanwhile, the path Parler appears to be taking to rejoin the internet is a shady one paid for by other explicitly extremist white national platforms that lost access to more mainstream services after being tied to terrorism. Now, this is a problem, and I do agree there's a problem on Parler. I just don't know if Parler is itself part of the problem. You see, here's the unfortunate thing. When you start deplatforming people and you start removing people, and some people do deserve to be removed. Make no mistake about it. People do deserve to be removed from Facebook and Twitter. Unfortunately, those people want to go somewhere. And clearly there is a there is a market now that is not being met. And conservatives, whether they're extremists or even not so extremists, are feeling like their voices are being censored by the big tech. And if you don't think that is true, stick around for our next story, because our next story might, maybe convince you a little bit more. So, but here's the problem with Parler. Parler exists because these people are being deplatformed. Conservatives are being targeted a little bit more than, the people on the left are. I mean, it has been brought up multiple times that, hey, where was the left condemning the modern acts of terror during the George Floyd protests? And yeah, point well taken. I mean, I can't control those people. All I can say is that the Capitol Hill riots were no less justified because this group got away with it. Just because they got away with it doesn't mean these people should get away with it. Yada, yada, yada. And so Parler I think, started with good intentions, and I do believe that freedom of speech is a top priority for these people, especially in the way that their CEO just responds to things. He does not respond in ways that logical businessmen would respond to these situations. But places like Parler and Free Speech Tube, yeah, you have some sane people who are just sharing a different point of view, but then you have extremists who are banned for very good reasons, possibly illegal reasons, and Parler grew way too fast, way too soon, and they were not really able to get it under control. Now, again, that doesn't mean Twitter and Facebook is a whole lot better. There's a lot of hate and anger on those platforms, and it's not gone unnoticed that they did not ask them to explain their monitoring systems or their how should we put this, their policing of those platforms. So it's one of these weird situations where technically no one's completely wrong in this situation. But, I also know some people who use Parler, and they're not extremists. They really are not. In fact, I know some people who even got on Parler, and then they kind of got off of it relatively quickly once they started seeing what some of their friends were saying. So there you go. There you go. Now, this article continues, 3 strikes. Parler's deplatforming began in the wake of the insurrection riots at the U.S. Capitol the week before, as it became clear a number of Parler users who had used the platform to make threats were in fact present in the mob that stormed the building. I mean, what's also interesting about this is that one of the women who was live streaming the whole thing was live streaming it on YouTube. Of course, YouTube was not contacted by Apple or Google, well, Google owns YouTube, and said, hey, what's your policing of extremist videos? So, you know what I'm saying? The insurrectionists who gathered in the District of Columbia on January 6th not only planned out their attack using social media platforms, but also used those platforms, especially Parler, while they were at the Capitol. Now, I would love to know exactly where this person actually says, like, yeah, I looked at all the extremists, I looked at all the protesters, and they used Parler the most. Things like that seem like rhetoric to me. So there you have it. Now, what about the site itself? Because as you go over here and you see, there's not a whole lot there. Well, Parler has apparently secured hosting from Epic to bring itself back online. Epic is best known for helping far-right extremist platform Gab to come back online a short time after a Gab user committed a mass murder at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. It has also provided services to other white nationalist, anti-Semitic, and neo-Nazi platforms, including 8chan, now known as 8kun, and the Daily Stormer. Yeah, but you also have people like, I believe Brett Weinstein is on Gab, and so's Tim Pool, and it's like they're not extremists. I think Dave Rubin is there. Multiple security researchers have also pointed out that Parler appears to have secured the services of DDoS Guard, a cloud service company based in Russia, which, hey, if there was someone in America who's willing to host them, maybe they wouldn't go to Russia. I don't know. That does make me concerned, though, for the record. So cybersecurity expert Brian Krebs last year published an analysis of potential legal liabilities DDoS Guard might face inside the United States due to its client list. Krebs called the list revelatory, noting it includes a vast number of phishing sites and domains tied to cybercrimes, services, or forums. Most notably, DDoS Guard also provides hosting services to Hamas, which the U.S. has classified as a terrorist organization for more than 20 years. But here's the thing. Again, Parler is a business. Parler is a business, and they want to be one of the players like Facebook and Twitter. And here's what's always interesting about these more conservative-leaning social media sections of the internet. It just takes one person to do something crazy, and then these sites are seen as, oh no, you're the problem because you gave them a platform. And they ignore the big tech like YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. What happens when people do extreme things on those platforms? What about that kid who went to his college and started, for lack of a better word, taking out young, beautiful women and he put his plan and his manifesto on YouTube and Facebook? Did people blame YouTube and Facebook for that situation? No, they didn't. And there have been several situations like that. Now, granted, Facebook and YouTube are pretty good about removing that stuff. I don't know how effective Parler was at getting rid of these problems. I really don't. So maybe that's where these companies have a right to start digging and asking some more questions. I don't know. But the thing is, and this is really kind of like part one of a part two topic, but we're going to wrap up this part of it right now. The question does come, will this actually prevent Parler from running? And what happens if Parler, actually decides, well, you know what, we're not being shared on Apple or Google. We're going to show them we're going to censor less. We're going to host our servers on Russia. I mean, I think Parler, with a little bit more time and a little bit more talking and maybe a few less threats, might have actually been able to have cleaned up their site enough, and it could have just been another social media site. But how much of this was the big tech being concerned about content on Parler, and how much of them simply wanted to take out a competitor? I don't know. That's a good question. Anyway, I would like to know what you think about this. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Now then, let's look at some of the comments. I see Ryan is here, and his badge is now pink, so you must have been here for a while. I'm glad you appreciate the video on Wave 8, and yeah, Wave 9 will be there, and yeah, I'll probably also do a top 5 best and worst. Yeah, Marco, this is live. So Lance Johns is driving in Las Vegas and more. Hey, Lance, we were actually just in Las Vegas this weekend. Did not make a scene about it at all because it was very, very low key. We basically just stayed in a room and we saw a couple movies, and that was it. We're still taking this virus very, very seriously. So no fan gatherings, no gambling, no nothing. Anyway, for everyone who's here, if you want to give a thumbs up, feel free to do so. And with that said, let's take a look at the second main topic. And the second main topic really is kind of a part two of the Parler story. So for those of you who might be watching this as an individual video, you might want to also watch the Parler video as well. But here's the thing. When Parler went offline, when Apple and Google said that they wanted a better understanding of what their monitoring of hateful and violent infused comments were, I said, that's fine. They have a right to do that. When Amazon decides that they want to not host them anymore because they're uncomfortable with the content, you know what? Hey, I'm concerned about that because, Amazon hosts an awful lot of stuff. But hey, technically, the way laws are written, they're allowed to do that. And people are saying this is the beginning of the end of free speech. And I try to be optimistic about these things. I try to say, no, let's not overreact. Let's just see what happens. But the reality of the matter is I knew deep down that this was actually probably going to be the start of a much bigger problem when Trump and Parler were taken away. Now, again, I have to stress, I don't particularly like Donald Trump. I mean, I like him when he's on The Apprentice. I don't know if I like him running my country. But, that's another discussion altogether. And even though I have a Parler website, I did it just to basically review the site and have not used it since. I was not interested in it. But here's the thing. Once those were removed, and one was removed for good reason and the other was reviewed for more dubious reasons, well, now places like CNN and other liberal media sites have actually called to silence conservative voices and take OWN and Newsmax off the air. Now, for those of you who are not aware of what OWN and Newsmax are, I think I've done videos about them before. They are basically conservative, maybe too conservative news organizations. Like, think about Fox News and then double or triple them. They are the ones that said for months on end that the election was fraudulent and it was rigged and it was stolen. They're the ones who said that people were stuffing the ballots, even though the way that it, by that same logic, like if the election was rigged, why did Republicans turn 13 seats in the House? I actually asked my mother-in-law this question one day, and she said, well, they were too busy stuffing the top ballot to worry about the bottom box. Which, look, I love you, mom-in-law. I mean, definitely, I love you. Thank you for bringing your daughter into the world. But that's not how this works. That's not how ballots are run. But, here's the thing. I mean, when there is a vast majority of liberal media out there, and there's been quite a few of it that has popped up over the last several years, it should stand to reason that there would be some conservative media that also popped up, and that they would have their own wild conspiracy theories. I mean, the liberal media says that, they don't peddle conspiracy theories, except that they peddled that whole Russian election hack thing, which actually has been investigated and has largely been debunked. And you could see Rachel Maddow just like almost in tears that ended up not being real because she had staked so much of her reputation on it. Well, here's the thing. I don't like either of these networks, for the record. I don't think they do real news, although Newsmax has finally conceded that Joe Biden is the winner of the election. But that doesn't mean that the big tech and the established media that's been around for a long time isn't calling for their heads. They're basically like the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. Off with their heads! And this is what the Washington Examiner has to say. This week's liberal media scream features CNN providing a platform for a call to take competitors Owen and Newsmax off the air and to also rob conservative influencers of social media outlets. On the heels of big tech kicking the conservative chat site Parler and firearm site AR15.com offline, which we are not going to talk about AR15.com because that's not really tech related. The former head of security for Facebook and Yahoo said taking platforms away from conservatives is the result of the election and protests at the U.S. Capitol. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to say, I don't disagree with that. When there's a violent insurrection, what usually happens is someone tends to get blamed for it. And in this case, it happens to be conservatives. Even though, there are so many conservatives that did not storm the Capitol. There are so many conservatives that watched what was happening on TV and said, that is wrong, we don't agree with that. And there are so many conservatives that actually said, I can't call myself a Republican anymore because I saw this, and I saw basically very, very few people saying this was wrong, and said, I can't do it. But the thing is, it's also an overreaction. What were these people saying the whole time? That they would be silenced by the liberal media. Now, the liberal media reacted, well, maybe not the liberal media, but, Facebook and Twitter, they reacted in ways that they felt was going to cover their butts, that this would get them in the least amount of legal problems. But what do? You enforce the idea that, conservatives' voices were out to be silenced. And so now they want to get back to Parler, and they want to, host it on, a Russian site or something like that. And now you have, CNN basically saying these networks should not exist. So Alex Samos said, we have to turn down the capability of these conservative influencers to reach these huge audiences. You know what? Last I checked, being a conservative was not an extremist. Remember when 9/11 happened? I mean, some of you probably don't remember 9/11. I mean, you know what happened, but you probably don't remember being there. But I remember shortly after 9/11, Muslims were enemy number one. If you were Muslim, you had to have been part of what happened. If you were from Pakistan or Afghanistan or Iran, you had to have approved of that. But that wasn't necessarily true. And we did basically a modern day witch hunt of Islamic people because we were upset at what happened. And that reaction was not entirely justified. I mean, yes, those countries do produce some extremists, but the key word is some. In fact, I have since gotten to know a couple who go to our church. They escaped from Pakistan, and they now go to our church, and they serve, and they're wonderful people. And they were treated like real garbage shortly after 9/11. Even though they watched what happened on TV as well, And they wept for us just like we wept for us. So it wasn't right when we did it then. And you know what? Saying like, hey, conservatives are the root cause of this, we need to shut down their platforms and their ability to speak. No, that is also not the right way to go. Let's continue. So, he says, then we're going to have to figure out the OWN and the Newsmax problem, urging that they be removed from cable systems. These companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and such to be bringing them into tens and millions of homes. Well, you know what? That's kind of an interesting thing, because you know what? I remember another time when, cable and violence and sex on TV were like getting really big. I remember when Sex and the City first came out. And I remember, like, at church, people were, like, pushing for Sex and the City to be removed. And they said a very similar thing. We don't think that, Warner Brothers or HBO doesn't have the right to make Sex and the City. We just don't think it needs to be broadcast into millions upon millions of homes. At which point, HBO's response was basically what it is for all these situations. Don't like it? Change the channel. Just change the channel. You don't like it, you don't have to watch it. And I think that step is being forgotten here. They don't like what Newsmax and OWN have to say. You know what? You don't have to like what Newsmax and OWN have to say. But I think pressuring Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast to not carry the platforms, that is a form of censorship, that is a form of witch hunting. Now, here's the thing, there used to be a lot more cable packages, but then they started consolidating and buying each other to the point where now there's basically those three. And that's a bigger problem. You have three big conglomerates basically deciding what you can and can't watch, and they're obviously going to favor their own network. And by the way, the guy who's on CNN, he's not an impartial source. He has a huge stake in people watching CNN and not the other guys. And by the way, CNN has some problems too. Stamos on Sundays, reliable sources where he appeared with Krebs Stamos Group partner Christopher Krebs, the Trump administration's former director of cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, said, first, you have to focus on the violent extremists, and those companies have to be brave in that way. And second, we have to turn down the capability of these conservative influencers to reach these huge audiences. There are people on YouTube, for example, that have a larger audience than daytime CNN, and they are extremely radical and pushing extremely radical views. And unfortunately, when you word it like that, when they say like, oh, they're pulling bigger numbers than anything CNN's doing, it's kind of like, so is the issue that they're saying stuff they shouldn't be saying, or is it the fact that they are getting more views than CNN? Just a thought. And so it's up to the Facebooks and the YouTubes in particular to think about whether or not they want to be effectively cable networks for disinformation. And then we're going to have to figure out the OWN and Newsmax problem. These companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need... Okay, so we said that before. But this is, allowing people to seek out information if they really want to, but not pushing it into their faces, I think is where we're going to have to go from here. Yeah, but when you remove these platforms from these sites, and when Facebook and YouTube decide they want to crack down those things, they do have little social monopolies. If you don't want to go to Facebook, where do you go? I guess Twitter, but Twitter is very different. If you don't want to go to YouTube, where do you go? You don't really go anywhere. YouTube, it's either YouTube or nothing, and that's so. Yeah, that seems like a form of censorship. Now, Media Research Center Vice President Brent Baker explains our weekly pick. A very solid signal. Big tech's agenda goes beyond what they want to portray as benign efforts to shut down those advocating violence. Stamos laid out the next steps. Use current concerns to justify a wider suppression of conservative voices who have allowed space for views those on the left find appalling. The answer is more free speech, not letting a small group of wealthy Silicon Valley tech leaders abuse their power and serve as speech police, deciding which views are okay or not with the elite at the moment. And I agree with that, because here's the thing. My whole thing is I say, hey, let them speak. And if what they say is dumb, let them hang themselves by their own words. If they are saying something that is extremely stupid and is not, particularly good, then you know what? Most rational people will see it. Now, of course, you do have extremists, and yeah, that's the thing. Focus on the extremists. Like, start reporting to the FBI when people are stockpiling guns. If you see a group that seems to be planning for violent insurrections, you have the Patriot Act. You can share that information with the FBI, and the FBI can get these people arrested if they find them to be a threat to our national security. But just censoring the conservative networks is not the call. And by the way, if that's all you censor, because here's the thing, I think the Young Turks is also an extremist media channel. I believe that they are no better than Alex Jones. But they have their own network on these channels because they're liberal, even though, their hosts say some pretty amazing things sometimes. Like, they actually were calling for violence when Donald Trump was winning the election, and it's, no one said anything about them. So I do think that we have started to see a conservative media censorship. Who knows if this video will even stay up? I don't want to be that guy. I hate being that guy, but, likes and shares definitely help in this situation. But I'm kind of curious. What do you guys think? Do you think this is the beginning, or do you think it's much to do about nothing? Love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, play responsibly. Have a good one. Hey, Repair Your PC. Welcome. Let's see here. Mohammed says, I live in Dearborn, supposedly the Shira capital of the world. What? Oh, interesting. And it says, a Sikh was killed because someone he was Muslim. Kevin, check out the movie Ford Some Faith Fasting. I will probably check that out. All right. So we have gotten our daily dose of politics out of the way. Let's move on to the third main topic and discuss more politics. But maybe this one won't be quite as controversial. So anyway, Prop 22. Prop 22 has been passed. It is basically the law of the land. Of course, it gives Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, all these companies, way too much power, and it stripped the power from the gig workers. I knew that was going to be a case. Me and Dark Road Run discussed this at length. We pretty much begged you guys not to vote for this. But you know what? The gig companies, they spent $200 million promoting this law. And they were really good at what they did. Heck, so good that 40% of people who voted yes for it said that they thought they were helping gig workers make more money, which they're not. Well, apparently gig workers and unions, of course they weren't going to take this sitting down. They have decided to sue in the California Supreme Court to have Prop 22 overturned. And before any of you say that this is not going to happen, I want to point out Proposition 8, which did pass in an election, was overturned in the California Supreme Court. Now, here's the thing. I do have mixed feelings about how this works. I personally believe that when you vote on something, the will of the people should be respected and honored. But California has this very strange thing where if certain senators and lawmakers in California don't think that law should have been passed, they just sue in the California Supreme Court, and the California Supreme Court tends to side with them. Now, granted, this might be a good thing for Prop 22, but I just have mixed feelings about it. I think if you vote on something, you need to just let it stand and let the consequences be what the consequences are. But anyway, let's look at the Washington Post article and see what's going on with Prop 22. So, a major labor union and several ride-hailing drivers are suing to overturn a newly passed ballot measure classifying gig workers as independent contractors in California. The groups filed suit Tuesday in California Supreme Court alleging Proposition 22 violates the state constitution and limits the power of state legislators to implement certain worker protections they are authorized to grant. They're not wrong, by the way. The suit, filed by Service Employees International Union and a group of ride-hailing drivers, asks the state Supreme Court to invalidate Prop 22, which cemented gig worker status as independent contractors after more than 58% of voters supported it in November. They argue the measure limits states' legislator ability to implement a system of workers' compensation in defiance of their constitutional authority to do so. It also argues that the proposition unconstitutionally defines what compromises an amendment to the measure, as well as violating a rule limiting ballot measures to a single subject to prevent voter confusion. The Protect App-Based Drivers and Service Coalition, which represents gig companies such as Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, criticized the lawsuit in a statement attributed to Uber driver Jim Pyatt, an activist who has worked in favor of Prop 22. Now, this is Pyatt said, nearly 10 million California voters, including the vast majority of app-based drivers, passed Prop 22 to protect driver independence while providing historical new protections. Voters across the political spectrum spoke loud and clear, passing Prop 22 in a landslide. Well, it wasn't a landslide. They won by 58%. That's almost half of the people disagreed. I just want to point that out. Meritless lawsuits that seek to undermine the clear democratic will of the people do not stand up to scrutiny in the courts. Yeah, but neither do really crummy laws that totally favor corporations over people. So, sometimes it works out. It's the latest turn in a heated saga that kicked off in 2019 when state legislators approved a law known as Assembly Bill 5 that classified certain categories of gig workers as employees. Gig companies, Uber and Lyft, argue that the law did not apply to them, but the courts side with the state and local officials, requiring the companies to classify drivers as employees. Meanwhile, the ride-hailing firms and food delivery giants such as DoorDash mounted a more than $200 million campaign, Prop 22, to fight the law. It aimed to provide limited benefits such as wage promise and health insurance stipend in exchange for classifying drivers as independent, barring from the employee protection such as sick pay and workers' compensation. The groups that filed the suit, which also include SEIU California State Council, took particular issue with the measure's inclusion of a provision requiring a 7/8 legislative supermajority to amend and even define what constitutes an amendment. That authority, they say, is vested with the courts, and that might be the biggest chance they have of overturning this. The lawsuit blasts the measure's drafters as having impermissibly usurped this court's authority to say what the law is by determining what constitutes an amendment. Further, they argued they violated the single subject rule by burying these cryptic amendment provisions on subjects not substantively addressed in the measure and in language that most voters would not understand. Yes, that happens a lot. They said they were suing in the state Supreme Court rather than a lower court because the issues were of broad public importance and required a speedy resolution to minimize harm to gig workers. And, I do agree. And here's the thing. On that level, I can see why you would take Prop 22 to court, because if they put in things that gives companies way too much power to decide what an amendment is, then yeah, that's a whole thing altogether. But as for Prop 22, look, here's the thing. I do think that Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, I think they all bought themselves a law. I think they bought themselves an exemption of a law. I don't think this was coincidence. I believe most of the people voting on the law, whether they be drivers or riders, were not well informed about what this actually was. And in the case of the riders, I think most of them didn't care. I think the only thing they saw were ads saying that basically if this thing didn't pass, their Uber ride was going to cost more money. And that's all they need to hear to say, nope, I'm not going to do that. I mean, that's why, putting a tax on smoking fails every single time. It's like they don't really care about the health ramifications of public smoking and things like that. They just see they're charging me 50 cents more a carton and I don't want to pay it. And so they'll turn it down. But I would like to know, what do you all think about this? Do you think that Prop 22 has a chance to be overturned in the California Supreme Court? I personally think it does. The California Supreme Court has overturned the will of the people before. They can easily do it again. And this is actually a prime topic for them to basically look at the companies and say, no, we are not going to let you do this. You are not going to buy a law overturned. That's my opinion. But I would like to know what you think. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. All right, let's look at a couple more comments. I see Carrie is here. Hi, how you doing? Fordson the movie, it is on YouTube. Okay, well, the comment is right there. I will definitely check it out if I have the time to do so. I think tonight I'm going to be watching a movie on Netflix with Chadwick Boseman, Mo Ramsey's Bottom Blues or something like that. That's what I'm going to be watching. So anyway, let's now start getting in. Let's get into what is probably going to be the most controversial topic of the video, and this is the fourth topic. Now, here's the thing: when people ask me how I wound up in Southern California, I always answer, I took a job at Disney. I was part of the Disney College Program. That's what I did. I earned my ears in 2010. It has now been more than 10 years, and the interesting thing about the college program is I look back at it with a lot of fondness, but it was also a little tough too. I remember struggling with money and things like that, and of course, one of the things that I struggled with the most when I worked at Disney was the annual pass holders. We called them annual pain in the assers. Now, since then, I have come to find out that there might be a new term for these people, pass holes, because these people make their life about Disney. They live and breathe Disney. In fact, I even found out that a lot of the Disney influencers, they actually move to Orlando and they make a business out of going to Disneyland every day. Now, here's the thing. That's awesome. If you could do that, that is awesome that you were able to figure out the proper way on how you can move to Orlando, get a house, and basically do it going to Disneyland. But it has caused some problems, and those people are in for a huge shock because Disneyland, we're talking about Florida, but really this is Disneyland. Disneyland. In fact, I got the wrong article up. Let me look this up real quick. I'm sorry, folks. I selected the wrong article. Let's go to this one with the Sacramento Bee. But Disneyland is ending its annual pass program with the parks being closed. Here's what the Sacramento Bee has to say. Looking to buy an annual pass at Disneyland Resort? You're out of luck. The California Theme Park Resort said last week that it's ending its pass holder program. Disneyland Resort in California made the announcement last week after it allowed county health officials to use its parking lot for a large-scale coronavirus vaccination site. California's Disneyland closed in March and has not reopened since because coronavirus metrics in the county where the park is located have not declined to the levels required by the state. Existing pass holders of the California parks will be given refunds, company officials said. We are currently developing new membership offerings that will utilize consumer insights to deliver choice, flexibility, and value for our biggest fans, Ken Patrick, Disneyland's president, said in a statement last Thursday. Now, here's the thing. Whenever they say they are retiring something that is of great value and gives people a lot of convenience and flexibility, they say they're going to replace it with something else that usually means they're going to take something away. Now, and if you're in Walt Disney World, I think they have halted new annual pass membership signups, but if you have existing annual memberships, you can renew them for the time being. But those will probably go away too. Now, here's my opinion. I think that this decision to end the annual pass program is long overdue, and I think it needed to happen. And I know some friends, some personal friends, who are not going to be happy that I said that. They love Disneyland. They love going multiple times a year. And it's going to get a lot more pricey to go to Disneyland now because they do this. Now, first of all, why would Disney do this? Well, it's a pretty obvious reason for why they would do this. It's because they don't make nearly as much money from the annual pass holders as they do someone who is going there for the first time. Someone who goes there for a single day, they are much more likely to buy food at the park. For example, annual pass holders know that they are allowed to bring food into the parks. Sorry, folks, got a message from the Rio. Wonder why. Anyway, they know that they are much more likely to buy food in the parks, and they are going to buy a souvenir. Annual pass holder doesn't always buy a souvenir. What's another reason? Well, when Disneyland does reopen, there is going to be a cap on the attendance. Well, who's the first people who are going to come back to the park? It's going to be the annual pass holders. It's going to be the locals. Well, they don't want their cap to be met by the million or so annual pass holders that they have. So get rid of it and force them to pay their way in just along with everyone else. And then there's another reason. I think it's because, the parks are so full now that it's like, you know what? We just don't need the parks to be full all the time anymore. Like, it doesn't matter so much if, people aren't buying things. So, and then, of course, there's the fact that the annual pass holders kind of take over the park. I mean, you can watch Clownfish TV if you want more stories like this. But there's, like, stories of, like, people getting in front of, like, a premiere photo spot in Disneyland and Disney World and just sitting there for, like, 15, 20, 30 minutes while someone takes pictures of them because they need it for their Instagram account, because that's what they are. They're an influencer. I think people making Disney about their life, like their life about Disney and the parks, I think that's not healthy. So I think this will force some perspective on the issue. Now, and here's another positive thing that might go forward. I mean, yeah, it's going to be pretty expensive to go to Disneyland still. I mean, when I first started working there, I think the tickets were like $78 to get into the park. Now it's $205. I mean, the ticket prices for Disneyland have been risen more in the last 10 years than the past 40 years of the park. That's pretty scary. But I think there might actually be slow weeks again. Like, we might be able to pinpoint weeks and days where it's like, if you go around this time, you will more than likely be able to do everything you want to do on a single day park hopper. I think that's what's going to happen. So here's the thing. I think this is a good thing. I think Disney should actually stay a special thing, like you do it once every other year or so, and it really truly remains this magical thing. If you're going all the time, it's not magical. It really isn't. Even if you tell yourself it is, it's not. But I think it's going to help with like the crowding situation. And I also think that, by the way, Disney World will also take away the passes. I do feel for the people who are able to make going to Disneyland and Disney World their job. Like, that is an awesome job to have. I would hate for that to be taken away. But you know what? This is why you have to create a job that's your own identity. I mean, yeah, I'm reading the news. I'm commenting on the news. But if you're coming here, if you're coming to this podcast, you're coming because you want to hear the Apptrepreneur and his co-hosts' opinions on this. There will be co-hosts, by the way, on the show. And that's just the way it is. And so, worst case scenario, I can always do things in my way that brings people back. So, that's just my opinion on it. But this is definitely shows the kind of loyalty that Disney has towards the fans. They don't care if you're a huge fan. They don't care how this is going to affect you. They just want to make money, and they have found a way to. They just got a huge pay raise when this thing comes to an end. Like, when coronavirus is a distant memory and we're going back to the parks on a regular basis, then guess what? Disneyland just got a huge pay raise. So anyway, I would like to know what all of you think about this. Do you agree with this? Are you unhappy that the annual pass program is coming to an end? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. All right, let's see if we have any other comments. I don't see any comments, so keep in mind, people, I do comment, answer your questions in between topics. If you don't ask them, can't answer them. So, and I ran out of my drink, of course. Oh well, we've only got 2 topics left, and they're relatively short. So let's move on to main topic number 5. And, I would like to hope that viewers of my channel would not fall into this scam. But let's say, okay, PlayStation 5 has come out. You want the system badly. You decide, you know what, I'm going to swallow my pride. I'm going to go to eBay. You see an auction going on for a PS5 box. You bid on it. You win it for $500. And what do you get? You get a box of the PS5. Now, some people say that they got scammed on these purchases. I personally feel differently. I feel that if someone wants to sell their empty PlayStation 5 box on eBay, they have the right to do it. And if you buy it thinking it's a system, it's probably because you didn't actually read the description. Most of these these listings that, sellers get sued for because they were scamming people are actually very descriptive, and they make it very clear. You're not getting the system. You're just getting the box, or you are just getting a picture of the system, whatever. And yet they wind up on Judge Judy all the time. Well, eBay, after, I don't know, more than 10 years of this being a problem, have finally decided that they are going to clamp down on empty PS5 box scammers. This is from PSU, which stands for PlayStation Universe. So, users attempting to flog Sony PS5 boxes for exuberant prices on eBay are being targeted by the auction site after scammers have been quickly trying to cash in on the supply drought for Sony's next generation console. eBay notes that posting empty box listings and item photos do not comply with its no items policy and will be subsequently given the boot, as sellers are not allowed to misrepresent what they're listing for sale on eBay. Now, eBay says, we have been taking action to remove fraudulent listings from our marketplace. For any purchase, but especially highly priced or in-demand items, we recommend that buyers exercise caution and thoroughly read the listing's description. Because, here's the thing. People who are selling PS5 boxes without the system in the box are usually very upfront about that fact. And the fact that these things get bought and then people look at the listings and they find this out, I don't know. To me, that seems to be like a buyer problem. But anyway, eBay is committed to providing a safe, secure online shopping experience to millions of people globally. Our protections include state-of-the-art detection tools to monitor listings on the site and robust systems to screen and verify new members. So that's eBay's response. Basically, eBay is still trying to take down these listings, but people are still getting hit with them hard. And again, my opinion is not a particularly popular one. I think that, hey, if you're buying something on eBay and you're not reading the listing correctly, I think that's on you. But that said, I also understand that it creates a lot of confusion when, like, an auction's ending. You see that it's only like $100. You see a picture of a PS5 box, and immediately you think, oh, it's got to be the system, but it's not. So there you go. Anyway, I would like to know what all of you think about this. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. All right. So then, that was that topic. Now let's talk about one final little topic. This one is this one's kind of fun. So, and it might actually, if any of you out there want HBO Max, you might especially like this topic. But Warner Media, when HBO Max launched, they had a 20% discount, where HBO Max costs like $16 a month. It's not the cheapest of the streaming services. I think it provides the most value for your money, but some people really like the $10 price point. You just start going above there, and people start getting, how should I say, a little anxious about the price. Well, Warner Media is actually extending the 20% discount for HBO Max subscribers. However, there is a catch. So, this is from The Verge. A discount on HBO Max that was supposed to end today, January 15th, has been extended until March 1st, 2021. The fine print of the offer hasn't changed. You can get 6 months of HBO Max for 20% off the normal total cost, which is usually $90 before tax. You'll pay $70 with this deal. It's like paying just under $12 a month instead of $15. I don't know if you can hear that. I think my wife is vacuuming the hall. She knew I was recording, but she decided to do it now. Anyway, if you can hear that, I'm sorry about that. The discount is open to both new and returning HBO Max subscribers, but it can't be stacked with a free trial or any other promotion. Now, as for why they're doing this, it's because I actually think the reason they're doing this is kind of an unspoken one. I don't think the Wonder Woman 1984 release was the boost that to HBO Max that they wanted it to be. I think they wanted people to sign up for 6 months, say, hey, you can watch Wonder Woman on HBO Max, you can watch Godzilla, you can watch Tom and Jerry, Mortal Kombat, for whatever that's worth. But I don't think people really bit. I'm sure that it made some movement to have Wonder Woman on HBO Max, but I don't think it made the kind of movement that they wanted. So now they're moving Godzilla versus Kong up. They're saying, hey, we're extending the discount so you can get 20% off, but you got to pay 6 months up front. So I think there's just a lot of things that are suggesting that Warner Media is just desperate to get HBO Max into the homes of people. And look, I think if you give it time, eventually it will become a staple, but they want it to be a staple now, not tomorrow. So they're doing these crazy big moves that I think is doing nothing but hurting them in the long run. Devaluing your movies by putting them day and date streaming, that does not help HBO Max, but it does hurt your revenue in the theaters. Giving this extra discount, I mean, yeah, it gets some people there, but then they're just going to cancel once they don't have the discount anymore. I think HBO Max, they just need to start highlighting that, you know what, they've got really good stuff on their platform. They've got stuff that you can't find anywhere else. You know, they've got His Dark Materials, they've got Game of Thrones, they've got the Sex and the City reboot. They have got so many neat stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And that's how they're going to eventually get HBO Max into people's homes. Maybe even a tiered system where it's like, hey, for basic stuff, it's $10 a month. If you want the premium quality stuff, it's $16 a month. You know, introduce people at a price that they can accept. But who knows? Maybe the promotion was actually very beneficial for them, but I have not heard them bragging about all the new subscribers that they signed up for. So that's why I think they're doing this. Anyway, my question is, what about all of you guys? Do you guys want this 20% discount? Will you be signing up for HBO Max? I said HNO Max. It's HBO Max. To get this discount, I would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. All right, so we have at least one more comment. Ryan says, speaking of Disneyland, did you see that Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Bear plush toys went in stock at Downtown Disney? I'm interested to know if you plan on buying any to sell on eBay. If you did, no, I do not plan to buy any of those to sell on eBay. Frankly, as much of a Disney fan as I am, I'm a media Disney fan. I can have a sense of what media Disney sells will sell on eBay, but when it comes to merchandise, I don't have the confidence to know what media will work on eBay and which one media won't. And I don't have an annual pass anyway, so I can't get the discount. So, you know, I just kind of let that go. All right, everyone, that is the end of this episode of the Apptrepreneur Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and all major streaming services, hopefully by next week. And you can catch me live on Sundays. Well, our Sunday schedule will start in February, but, you know, in Sundays, you'll be able to catch the Apptrepreneur Show live here on my YouTube channel. In the meantime, we'd like to know what kind of topics you'd like to hear about. You can comment below, share this video, and, well, I will see you next time. Have a good one.